In another development, there is mounting opposition to the introduction of the comprehensive sexuality education program 4 days after the guidelines were released. Many, including religious leaders and critics of the LGBT movement, have been strongly opposed to this. The latest to have added their voice is the National Association of Graduate Teachers, who say it was not consulted in the drafting of this curriculum. The curriculum, which is expected to begin next academic year, is meant to introduce pupils in all public schools in Ghana, including 5-year-olds, to the CSE program, which includes controversial sexual reproductive health topics. We'll hear from Nangra shortly, but first listen to this news desk report.
We in Ghana have a guideline that I've shared with you that we see it is imperative, if this nation should develop, that sexuality education should be part of the curricula that we would launch this year in September.
Education Minister Matthew Opoku-Prempeh speaking at the launch of the Comprehensive Sexuality Education Program in January this year. He justified the introduction of the CSE into the curriculum, that it was important to enhancing the knowledge of Ghanaian students about sexuality.
Ghana has long recognized sexual and reproductive health education as a conduit for addressing issues affecting the youth in this area. Originally provided by elders and other traditional leaders in community, aspects of reproductive health education were introduced in the school system with the advent of formal education.
But parents, religious organizations, and civil society groups began to raise concerns after the document was leaked to the media.
Okay. At primary 5, who is 10 years, is being taught about relationships, friendship, dating and courtship. And that's in here.
Primary 5?
Yes, that's 10 years,
10 years
at primary 5.
Okay.
They're teaching them about friendship, dating and courtship.
And this got many talking. The first to have raised a red flag was the fierce critic of the LGBT movement, lawyer For Amonin, who said some texts and modules in the curriculum resonated with LGBT activism.
You see, it is a strategy. They have a plan. It is always not open for you to see. It is very subliminal, and they come in all sorts of ways. Now, what is their strategy in terms of Africa? They have noticed that our culture and our religion, we're very strong. So what do we do to counter this? Let's go through education. And education is strong because if you win the mind, then you can win what? The heart. They work on the instincts, the feelings of children, make them feel that, oh, it is nice to be erotic, to touch your organs, to masturbate, to do all sorts of the freedom, which in latter years, they will encourage you to accept.
And some parents have also been condemning the attempts by the government to incorporate this into the curriculum, as they feel they should be the ones teaching their children about the sensitive topics of sex and sexuality.
It's not our culture. For our culture is different. We cannot take white man to compare with the blacks, because we have our real culture. Before you, as a woman, you know a man there, you have to mature before you know. So I know I give them.
Executive Secretary of the National Council for Curriculum Assessment, Dr. Prince Ama, says the introduction of these into the curriculum is not new.
The concepts in the CSE are something that are incorporated in aspects of our curriculum at different levels and different subjects. They are taught interdisciplinary form, self-identity and knowing about our community, the values and attitudes, personal hygiene and roles and responsibility as a child. We have something like that in our school system currently.
Despite the strong defense mounted by the NACA, the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council has vowed to kick against the implementation of what it says is a demonic program. Reverend Dr. Paul Frimpong Manson is the president.
We, the Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council, we are totally opposed to it. None of our teachers will teach that. We will walk our children out, and any government who will promote it, it will be a tool for him to walk out. So many things we are fighting against: sickness, diseases, and whatever. We should teach people the better way to control these things, not how to be gays and lesbians and do all kind of social vices, which is contrary to scriptures. We will kick against it.
So, is there an attempt to subtly introduce LGBT ideas into Ghana's education system, or the concerns being raised amount to taking things too far? Parents are worried, teachers are worried, religious groups are worried, and the Ghanaian, caring about their values of chastity, is even more worried.
So now NAGRAD claims the program was drawn up without their consent and input from teachers. Angel Kabanu is president of NAGRAD.
I have had countless reactions, complaints, even some of my members even accusing leadership that we were part of the decision to introduce these syllables, which of course I have indicated elsewhere that I have not been part of any decision to introduce anything. The fact of the matter is that people are concerned, people are disturbed, and the minds of those people have to be cleared on issues. I'm sure it is the beliefs and orientation of most people that is driving them to react on this issue. If the general sentiment of our members is that this is inappropriate, then we will have to issue a statement with regards to that. But I think that before we even get there, the Ghana Education Service and the curriculum people will have to sit and revisit this issue. Whether they like it or not, it has raised hue and cry. There is an international agenda championed by Caucasians and Westerners to ensure that they smuggle these LGBT, gay issues, lesbianism, and things to education worldwide. It didn't start today. It didn't start with Ghana. When you go to countries in Southern Africa, they are suffering some of these things. They finance programs, they finance projects, and cunningly introduce some of these issues. I have attended several international conferences, and LGBT, lesbianism, and gay issues have become very prominent in this. So it is a huge international agenda. You realize that hardly will an African head of state be interviewed by an international radio or television. Hardly will they not mention issues of LGBT. So that is the reason for which the leadership came. So it's an international agenda that we all have to be cautious that we don't get ourselves involved in.
Well, NAGRAD is not alone. Islamic scholar and spokesperson for the Chief Imam, Sheikh Karamia, says the leadership of the Muslim community has not been consulted.
The whole concept is new and very unfamiliar to our environment, and it's also in conflict with our traditions, even in terms of our religious diversity. There are certain virtues we hold in common, and matters of morality are things that almost all the religions agree on. So our traditions and values related to matters of the sex is something that we uphold dearly, and we think that is part and parcel and integral to our lives. So for such new concept to be introduced without broad consultation, for us to, one, understand the concept very well, two, to know where does it begin from. If we want to engage in sex education, where does it begin and where does it end? This framework has not been made clear, so we've just heard that this has been introduced, and I think that that is where I find the fault, and something needs to be done about it. I'm very convinced that no such consultation, broad consultation, has ever been done. I'm sure many will agree with me. We need to register our complete disapproval of it and let the authorities understand that such things, particularly in Islamic schools, may not be approved and may not be accepted in our schools.
Despite the mounting pressure from the public, the UNFPA's resident representative here in Ghana, Niyi Ojuolape, has still mounted a case for the CSE, as he says it is meant for the general development of the student.
Now, this entire document, the issue of the rolling out of comprehensive sexuality education, it's not just going to be done by just imposing it on people, because they are what we call the gatekeepers, and you will need to talk to them. All the people, and I appreciate all the comments that have been made and the passion and the concerns that have been raised. about the issue of, oh, we don't want to teach our children bad things. I can tell you that I'm a father. I also don't want my children to be taught bad things. But I can tell you that the idea is within our society, we're going to reach out to those that we call the gatekeepers, that is the faith-based community, community leaders, parents too. We have there are programs that are going on, which I know which government is doing, is undertaking to engage everybody as appropriate within their context. But then the ultimate goal is to prevent this malice in the society. But there is the issue of, somebody said there is the issue of public mistrust. That is possible. But then I'm sure government is looking at it to fix it. There's an issue of communication, to communicate this in the manner in which it is, to show that there is no underhand motive there. Somebody said that that we have to be vigilant because they might want to smuggle something and push in there. Please tell me, that's even insulting on the sensibilities of the people who are going to be teaching this and the people here locally, because this document was developed locally. It was not developed for us by anybody.
Well, it appears the controversy is not restricted to Ghana alone. In Jamaica and Mexico, for example, authorities are up in arms over the new educational reforms, and there is a petition for the reforms to be withdrawn.
This is definitely an attack. It will affect your child rearing. It will affect your education system.
This is instructions for the teacher in the classroom to ask her or his students, how do people express their sexual feelings? What is abstinence? And here are some answers. Oral sex, masturbation, anal sex, massage, holding hands, touching each other's genitals, saying, I like you. And what they're doing is equating all these things. Saying I like you is equal to anal sex.
It is pornography. Men, especially on the House floor, did not want to look at. We couldn't show this on the television news, but yet we want our 4th grade children to be looking at this book.
In the name of sexuality education, children are seeing obscene materials that have been ruled by Congress and by the Supreme Court impossible to show.